The Galactic Concord had ruled the stars for 11,000 years, and in all that time, they had never met a species quite like humanity. The Concord was a union of 2,000 alien races, each one ancient and powerful in their own way. They had built empires that stretched across spiral arms, created technologies that could reshape planets, and developed cultures so complex that even their simplest art forms took centuries to understand. But their greatest achievement was not any of these things. Their greatest achievement was the 47 Laws of War. These laws were carved into a moon made of pure crystal, orbiting the neutral world of Valdris. Every spacefaring species knew them by heart. Every military commander memorized them before taking their first command. The laws were sacred, unbreakable, and they had kept the galaxy from tearing itself apart for longer than most species had existed or still happened, of course. The galaxy was too large and too diverse for perfect peace. But war under the 47 laws was something controlled, something civilized. It was more like a deadly game than the chaos the primitive species engaged in. Law 1 stated that all wars must be declared formally, with proper notice given to the enemy. Law 7 demanded that battles take place only at agreed locations, far from civilian populations. Law 12 protected non-military vessels absolutely. Law 23 required all parties to honor retreat signals. There were laws about prisoners, laws about weapons, laws about communication. Every possible situation had a rule, and every rule had been followed for millennia. The elder races of the Concord looked upon these laws with pride. They had evolved beyond the barbarism of their ancestors. They had created a system where disputes could be settled through controlled violence, where victory meant gaining territory or resources, not extinction. No species had been wiped out by war in over 9,000 years. Then the humans arrived. They came from a small yellow star in an unremarkable part of the Orion Arm, a region so quiet that most Concord maps did not even bother to name it. Their ships were crude things, barely capable of faster than light travel, held together by what seemed like desperate hope and primitive engineering. When they made first contact with a Concord patrol vessel, the aliens aboard were not sure whether to laugh or feel pity. Humanity was given observer status in the Concord, a position reserved for species too young and too weak to matter. They were allowed to watch, to learn, to slowly develop until they might one day be ready for full membership. Most Concord races expected this process to take at least 1,000 years. The humans had other ideas within 50 years. They had reverse-engineered Concord technology and begun building their own fleet. Within 80 years, they had established colonies on 12 worlds. Within a century, they had become impossible to ignore. Some of the elder races found them amusing, like watching a child learn to walk. Others found them unsettling, though they could not explain why. There was something in the way humans looked at the stars, something hungry and desperate and utterly unwilling to accept limits. Ambassador Vethril of the Kryn Dominion described it best when he said that humans had the eyes of prey animals who had somehow convinced themselves they were predators. The Vethkai Empire was the first to test humanity. The Vethkai were an ancient warrior race, tall and elegant, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed with inner fire. They had fought in over 300 formal wars and lost only 12. Their fleet was legendary, their tactics refined over 10,000 years of practice. They viewed war as the highest form of art, a way to prove the superiority of their culture and their people. When the Vethkai looked at human space, they saw easy territory. Here was a young species with limited ships, primitive weapons, and no experience in galactic warfare. Conquering them would be simple, and it would send a message to other young races about the proper order of things. Supreme Commander Velthrix filed the formal declaration of war through proper Concord channels, as required by Law 1. The document was beautiful, written in the flowing script of his people, outlining the reasons for the conflict and the terms of potential surrender. He set the battle date for 3 cycles hence, giving the humans more than enough time to prepare their pathetic fleet. The neutral ground would be the Saronis Nebula, a region of space specifically designated for formal combat. There, far from any inhabited world, the 2 fleets would meet and decide the fate of Earthfelthrix assembled 4,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of Vethkai engineering. Crescent-shaped vessels with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand solar flares. His crews were veterans of a dozen conflicts. Trained from birth in the art of civilized warfare, humanity sent 340 ships on Earth. The mood was grim, but not hopeless. The humans had studied the 47 laws carefully, and they understood what was expected of them. They would meet the Vethkai at Saronis, fight with honor, and almost certainly lose. The Concord would then step in, impose reparations on the Vethkai, limit their expansion, and humanity would survive as a diminished but intact species. That was how the system worked. That was how it had always worked. Admiral Helena Jang did not accept this. She was 63 years old, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much death. She had commanded ships in 3 different conflicts on Earth before humanity reached the stars, and she understood something that the elegant Vethkai did not. She understood what it meant to fight for survival on the night before the fleet departed. She sat alone in her quarters aboard the U.S. Defiance, reading the 47 laws on a datapad. She read each one carefully, not as a set of rules to follow, but as a map of assumptions, a guide to what the galaxy expected and feared. When she finished, she set the datapad down and stared out at the stars for a long time. The Concord had written these laws to protect themselves. They had created a system where war was expensive but survivable, where the powerful stayed powerful and the weak accepted their place. They had never imagined a species that would rather burn the entire game board than. Luzjang pressed a button on her console and called her senior officers to a meeting. "They want a war," she said when they had assembled, her voice quiet but steady. "And we are going to give them something they have never seen before. We are going to show them what happens when you corner a species that has spent its entire existence fighting to survive." She pulled up a holographic display of the 47 laws. These rules were written without us. They were designed for species that have something to lose. We have everything to lose, and that makes us more dangerous than they can possibly imagine. Her officers stared at her, understanding slowly dawning in their eyes. "Admiral," her second-in-command said carefully, "what you are suggesting would make us enemies of the entire galaxy." Jang nodded, her expression hard. "Perhaps, but our children will be free, and that is all that matters. Let the galaxy learn to fear the name of humanity." The fleet departed for Saronis the next morning, carrying 340 ships and the total weight of human defiance. The Vethkai were expecting a war. They were about to receive something else entirely. The United Earth Council met in an underground chamber beneath the Swiss Alps, the same bunker that had sheltered world leaders through 3 global wars and 2 near-extinction events. Now it would host the most important decision in human history. Representatives from every nation sat around a massive circular table, their faces lit by holographic displays showing Vethkai fleet positions. 4,000 silver crescents arranged in perfect formation, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Against this armada, humanity could offer only 340 vessels. Most of them converted cargo ships with weapons bolted onto their hulls. The military analysts had run the simulations 10,000 times. The result was always the same. Humanity had a 3% chance of survival in a straight battle. And even that assumed the Vethkai made several major mistakes. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the center of the chamber, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. He was arguing for compliance, for following the 47 laws and accepting whatever fate the Concord system delivered. "We fight with honor," he said, his hands gripping the podium. "And yes, we will probably lose. But the system protects the defeated. The Concord will impose limits on the Vethkai. They will not be allowed to exterminate us. Our people will survive, even if we must accept a reduced status for a few centuries." General Amara Okonkwo shook her head. She was a tall woman with scars on her face from the African resource wars. And she had no patience for diplomatic optimism, a reduced status, she repeated, her voice bitter. "Do you know what that means, Ambassador? It means our children become servants. It means our culture gets archived in some alien museum, while the Vethkai use our world as a vacation resort. It means we survive as pets, not as people. That is better than extinction," Chine replied. "Is it?" Okonkwo demanded. "Because I have studied the Concord system very carefully, and I have seen what happens to defeated species. The Thren lost a war 600 years ago, and they are still paying tribute. The Marathi were conquered 1,000 years back, and their entire race now works in Vethkai mines. This system does not protect the weak. It preserves them for exploitation." The chamber erupted in argument, voices rising and falling as delegates debated the impossible choice before them. Fight and die, or submit and suffer. Admiral Helan Jiang had remained silent throughout the discussion, standing apart from the chaos with her arms crossed and her eyes distant. When the noise finally died down, she stepped forward and the room fell silent. "You are all asking the wrong question," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You are asking whether we should follow the rules or break them. But that assumes the rules were ever meant to help us." She pulled up a holographic display of the 47 laws, the sacred text that governed all warfare in the galaxy. "I have read these laws many times," she continued, "and I have noticed something interesting. Every single one of them benefits the powerful. They protect established fleets, preserve existing territory, and ensure that wars never truly threaten the winners. These are not rules of fairness. They are rules of control." Chun frowned and asked what she meant. "Look at Law 1. Jiang said, highlighting the text. "Wars must be declared with 3 cycles' notice. Who benefits from that? The side with the bigger fleet, because they have time to position their forces perfectly. A smaller fleet would benefit from surprise, from striking before the enemy is ready." She moved to another law. Law 7 requires battles at designated neutral locations. Again, who benefits? The larger force, because they can bring all their ships to a single point. A smaller force would benefit from choosing their own ground, from fighting where they have advantages. She went through law after law, showing how each one favored the strong over the weak, the established over the newcomers. The Concord did not write these laws to make warfare, Jiang concluded. They wrote them to make sure they could never lose. And now they expect us to play by their rules and accept our defeat gracefully. The delegates stared at her, the truth of her words slowly sinking in. "What are you proposing?" the Russian representative asked. His voice careful. Jiang turned to face them all, and her eyes were hard as steel. "I am proposing that we refuse to play their game. The Vethkai are expecting a formal battle, with proper formations and honored retreats and all the civilized nonsense they have practiced for 10,000 years. They are not expecting what humans do when we are cornered." She pulled up images from human history, wars that made the delegates flinch. Trench warfare and guerrilla tactics, nuclear weapons and biological agents, terrorism and total war. The long bloody record of a species that had never learned to lose gracefully. "We have spent our entire existence fighting each other," Jiang said, "and we have learned things that the galaxy has never imagined. We know how to fight dirty, how to strike from shadows, how to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. The Vethkai think war is an art form. We know that war is survival. Ambassador Chen was pale now, shaking his head. If we do this, we become monsters in the eyes of every species in the galaxy. They will unite against us. They will destroy us. Perhaps, Zhang admitted. Or perhaps they will learn to fear us. Perhaps they will decide that humanity is not worth the cost of fighting. We are a small species in a large galaxy, Ambassador. We have no hope of conquering anyone. But if we show them that attacking us means paying a price beyond anything they have imagined, they may leave us alone. She paused, letting her words settle over the room. I am not asking you to become monsters. I am asking you to show the galaxy that we are not prey. The HFY chose this war. They looked at our worlds and our children and saw easy targets. We are going to teach them that there are no easy targets in human space. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The delegates could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. The accumulated rage of a species that had clawed its way out of every disaster the universe had thrown at them. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Humanity would not die following someone else's rules. Admiral Zhang returned to her ship that night and began issuing orders. In shipyards across human space, engineers started making modifications that no Concord species would have imagined. Weapons designed for cruelty rather than honor. Systems built to exploit every assumption the galaxy had made about civilized warfare. HFY were preparing for a battle humanity was preparing for something else entirely in her quarters. Zhang looked at a photograph of her grandchildren. Two young faces full of hope and innocence. She thought about the future they deserved, the freedom they had a right to. Then she put the photograph away and got back to work. She had a war to win, and she would do whatever it took to win it. In the weeks before the battle, humanity became something new. The shipyards worked around the clock. Engineers and technicians laboring in sealed bays where even the security cameras had been disabled. What they were building could never be recorded, never be traced, never be admitted to. They were creating weapons that violated not just the letter of the 47 laws, but their very spirit. Commander Marcus Cole supervised the modifications to the civilian transport fleet, watching as cargo holds were converted into launch bays for autonomous drones. These ships would keep their civilian transponder codes, broadcasting peaceful intentions while carrying enough firepower to crack a small moon. This feels wrong, his assistant said one night. Staring at a freighter that had been transformed into a hidden weapons platform, Cole understood the feeling. He had trained his entire career to fight with honor, to uphold the traditions of military service. But he had also studied history, and he knew what happened to honorable soldiers who fought against enemies that outnumbered them 12 to 1. Wrong is a luxury we cannot afford, he replied. We can feel guilty after our children are safe. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Weapons specialists designed missiles that would target life support systems specifically, ensuring maximum crew casualties. Communication experts built jammers that would operate on frequencies the Concord had never thought to encrypt. Psychologists studied HFY culture, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited in the chaos of battle. The 47 laws had created a galaxy where certain things were simply unthinkable. No one targeted life support because Law 31 forbade it. No one jammed communications because Law 15 protected them. No one used false identification because Law 38 made it forbidden. Humanity looked at these assumptions and saw opportunities. Admiral Zhang held a final briefing 3 days before departure, gathering her senior officers in a secure room aboard the Defiance. She displayed the 47 laws on the wall and walked through each one, explaining not what they forbade, but what they revealed. Law 1 requires formal declaration, she said, which means the galaxy has never developed defenses against surprise attacks. They simply do not expect them. When we strike before the formal combat signal, they will not know how to respond. She moved to the next law. Law 7 designates neutral battlegrounds, which means fleets always know exactly where the fighting will happen. They position themselves perfectly, but they never prepare for attacks from unexpected directions. We are going to turn the entire battlefield into a trap. Law after law, she dissected the assumptions of galactic warfare. The Concord had spent 11,000 years refining the rules, but they had also spent 11,000 years forgetting how to fight without them. Law 12 protects civilian vessels absolutely. Jiang continued, which means no one ever suspects them. Our transports will be ignored until they open their weapon bays. By then, it will be too late. Law 23 requires honoring retreat signals, which means enemies expect safety when they run. We will pursue them. We will show them that there is no escape. Law 31 forbids targeting life support, which means crews believe they are safe inside their ships. They are wrong. Her officers listened in silence, their faces grim but determined. They understood what they were being asked to do. They understood the cost. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the youngest officer in the room, raised her hand. Admiral, what happens after? Even if we win, the entire galaxy will know what we did. They will hate us, Jiang nodded slowly. Yes, they will hate us. They will call us barbarians and monsters and every other name they can think of. But here is something you must understand, Lieutenant. Hatred is not the same as disrespect. The galaxy has spent a century looking at humanity as children, as primitives barely worth noticing. After this battle, they will never make that mistake again. She paused, her eyes sweeping across the room. We are not fighting for the galaxy's approval. We are fighting for our survival. I would rather be hated and free than loved and enslaved. The final preparations took place in secret. Human ships loaded weapons that had no Concord designation, devices that would have been declared illegal if anyone had known they existed. Marines trained for boarding actions that violated every tradition of formal challenge. Pilots practiced attack runs that would have been considered cowardly by any civilized standard in the quiet moments between drills. The humans talked among themselves about what they were about to do. Some felt guilt, others felt fear, but beneath it, all was something harder and colder. Determination. They thought about their families back on Earth, the children who would grow up free or grow up as servants. They thought about the long history of their species, the wars and plagues and disasters they had survived. They thought about the ancestors who had crawled out of the mud and reached for the stars. Against all odds, the Vethkai had chosen this fight. They had looked at humanity and seen easy prey. They had filed their formal declaration and assembled their beautiful fleet and prepared to add another conquered species to their collection. They had no idea what was coming on the day of departure. Admiral Jiang addressed the entire fleet through a secure channel. In a few days, we will face an enemy that outnumbers us 12-1. By every calculation, we should lose. By every tradition of galactic warfare, we should accept our defeat with dignity and hope for mercy. Her voice hardened. We are not going to do that. We are going to show the Vethkai what happens when you threaten a species that learned to fight by trying not to die. We are going to break every rule they have ever known and teach them a lesson they will never forget. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quiet but fierce. The galaxy thinks we are children. They think we are primitives who do not understand civilized warfare. They are right about one thing. We do not understand it. We do not accept it. We refuse to play by rules that were designed to ensure our defeat. Today, we go to war. Not the kind of war the Concord knows, but the kind of war humans have always fought. The kind where you do whatever it takes to protect what you love. The kind where there are no rules except survival. The Vethkai wanted a battle. We are going to give them a nightmare. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. 340 ships carrying the total weight of human defiance into the darkness. Between stars, at the Coronis Nebula, 4,000 Vethkai warships waited in perfect formation. Ready for a civilized war, they would never fight one again. Supreme Commander Velfrix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Blade, watching the stars with the calm confidence of a predator waiting for prey. His fleet surrounded him in the traditional fan of dominance. 4,000 ships arranged in perfect crescent formation, their silver hulls gleaming in the light of distant suns. He had fought in 37 formal wars and never known defeat. His tactics were studied in military academies across the galaxy. His name was spoken with respect and fear by 100 different species. Today would add another victory to his legend. The humans emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the nebula, their 340 ships appearing as scattered dots on Vethkai sensors. They were not even in proper formation, just a loose cluster of vessels that seemed almost random. They do not know basic fleet positioning, his lieutenant observed with a sneer. This will be easier than we thought, Velfrix nodded. But somewhere deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that something was wrong. The humans had spread themselves across an unusually wide area, and many of their ships were broadcasting civilian transponder codes. Freighters and passenger vessels mixed among the warships, like tourists at a military parade. Before he could analyze this further, his communication officer spoke. Supreme Commander, we are receiving contact from the neutral observation platforms. They are prepared to witness the formal declaration of combat and verify compliance with the 47 laws. Velfrix straightened his uniform and prepared the traditional speech. It was a beautiful piece of rhetoric, composed by the finest poets of his people, outlining the justice of his cause and offering the humans a chance to surrender before the fighting began. He never got to deliver it. The human ships opened fire without warning, without declaration, without any of the rituals that had preceded every battle in galactic history for 11,000 years. But they did not fire at the Vethkai fleet. Instead, their weapons targeted the neutral observation platforms, the communication buoys, the relay stations that would have transmitted the battle to Concord authorities in seconds. Every outside connection was severed. The battlefield was blind. They cannot do this, someone on the bridge shouted. Law 15 forbids. The rest of the sentence was lost as the civilian transports opened their cargo holds. Thousands of objects poured into space. Mines and autonomous drones, sensor decoys and jamming devices. Clouds of weaponized debris that turned the elegant battlefield into a deadly maze. The fan of dominance, that perfect crescent formation which had won so many wars, became a trap. Vethkai ships triggered explosions simply by maintaining their positions. Their careful spacing, designed for coordinated fire, now meant that chain reactions could destroy entire squadrons. Velfrix screamed orders, trying to reorganize his fleet, but the jammers had already begun their work. Human devices broadcast chaos on every frequency the Concord used, scrambling communications with signals that no one had ever thought to encrypt. Ship captains fired blind, sometimes hitting their own allies. This is not war, his lieutenant gasped, his silver face pale with shock. This is madness. The human ships moved through the chaos like predators through tall grass, striking from unexpected angles, vanishing before return fire could find them. They were smaller and fewer, but they used the confusion as a weapon, letting the Vethkai destroy themselves while picking off isolated targets. Then, the boarding parties came. There was no formal challenge, no traditional exchange of terms. Human Marines simply breached Vethkai hulls with cutting charges and poured through the gaps. They fought in corridors with brutal efficiency, using weapons designed to kill quickly and messily. Vethkai warriors were trained for honorable combat, for duels and formal surrenders. They did not know how to fight enemies who targeted officers first, who used grenades in sealed spaces, who showed no interest in taking prisoners on ship after ship. The story was the same. Human Marines took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. They hacked computer systems, downloaded tactical data, and then vented entire sections to space. Life support became a weapon. Escape pods became traps. Velthrix watched his fleet disintegrate around him. 4,000 ships becoming 3,000, then 2,000, then less. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, impossible to pin down. Impossible to predict. A Vethkai captain broadcast the formal retreat signal. The sacred gesture that Law 23 declared must be honored absolutely. The humans ignored it and pursued the fleeing ship until it was nothing but debris. Another captain ejected in a life pod, expecting to be collected for ransom as tradition demanded. The humans took him aboard, but not for ransom. They wanted information, and they had ways of getting it that no civilized species had used in millennia. Send surrender terms, Velthrix finally ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. Tell them we accept any conditions. His communication officer tried, but there was no one to send to. The humans had destroyed every channel, every relay, every means of formal negotiation. There would be no surrender, no treaty, no civilized end to this war, Admiral. Jang watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the Vethkai formation collapsed into chaos. Around her, officers reported victory after victory. Enemy ships destroyed or disabled, boarding parties completing their missions. Supreme Commander Velthrix is attempting to contact us, a communication officer reported. He wants to negotiate. Jang considered this for a moment, then nodded. Put him through. The holographic image of Velthrix appeared before her, and Jang saw something in his eyes that she suspected no human had ever seen in Vethkai. Genuine terror. You have broken every law, he said, his voice trembling. The Concord will destroy you for this. Every species in the galaxy will unite against such barbarism. Jang leaned forward, and her face was calm and cold. The Concord was not there when you declared war on our children. Your laws were not written to protect us. They were written to protect you from ever facing someone with nothing to lose. She paused, letting the words sink in. You wanted to enslave humanity. You looked at our world and saw easy prey. Now you know the truth. There is no easy prey in human space. Velthrix tried to respond, but Jang cut the transmission. Finish it. She ordered her fleet. The battle lasted 3 more hours. When it was over, 187 human ships had been destroyed. The Vethkai had lost 3,847. Survivors fled into the darkness between stars, carrying stories of what they had witnessed. Stories of a species that fought without rules, without honor, without any of the civilized restraints that made war bearable. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. They would never forget. The Galactic Concord convened an emergency session for the first time in 6,000 years. Representatives from 2,000 species gathering in the Great Hall of Valdris to witness the aftermath of something unprecedented. The battle recordings played on massive holographic displays. And across the chamber, aliens of every shape and form watched in stunned silence. They saw civilian ships transformed into weapons platforms. They saw communication networks destroyed without warning. They saw boarding parties fighting without formal challenge. They saw retreat signals ignored and survivors hunted down when the recordings ended. No one spoke for a long time. The Vethkai delegate was the first to break the silence. His silver arm still wrapped in regeneration bandages from injuries he had suffered escaping the massacre. His voice shook with rage and humiliation as he demanded justice. These humans have violated every principle of civilized warfare, he declared. They have made a mockery of everything the Concord stands for. We must respond with overwhelming force. We must destroy them before their barbarism spreads. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many delegates nodded, their alien faces twisted with disgust and fear. The humans had done something unforgivable, something that threatened the very foundation of galactic order, but not everyone agreed. The Rilith ambassador rose slowly from her seat, her crystalline body humming with frequencies older than most species in the room. The Rilith were among the founding members of the Concord, ancient beings who had helped write the original laws. When she spoke, everyone listened. "We did not write the 47 laws out of kindness," she said, her voice resonating like wind through crystal caves. "We wrote them to create a galaxy where war had consequences we could accept. We designed a system that protected the powerful, that ensured no established species would ever face true extinction. We never asked what would happen when someone emerged for whom our consequences were irrelevant." She turned to face the Vethkai delegate. "You declared war on a species barely a century old, with a fleet 1/12 the size of yours. You expected them to follow rules they had no voice in creating, to accept defeat gracefully, to become another servant race in your collection. Instead, they showed you what war looks like for those who have nothing to lose." The chamber fell silent again. The humans did not shatter our laws. The Rilith continued. "They revealed that our laws were always a luxury. We could afford them because we had never faced true desperation. We had forgotten what it means to fight for survival." The debate that followed lasted for days. Some delegates demanded military action, arguing that humanity must be punished as an example to other young species. Others urged caution, pointing out that the humans had just destroyed a fleet 4 times their size and would not be easy prey in the end. It was the practical voices that won. A coalition led by humanity had already begun forming. Other young species, races that had been oppressed or exploited under Concord rules, had started reaching out to Earth. They saw in humanity something they recognized: defiance against a system that had never served them. Going to war with humanity meant going to war with a growing alliance. And no one wanted to test whether the humans would fight their second war the same way they had fought their first admiral. Jang appeared before the Concord via holographic link, standing straight and proud in her uniform. She did not apologize, did not show shame, did not pretend to regret what her species had done. "Humanity does not want war with the Concord," she said, her voice clear and steady. "We never wanted war at all. We wanted to be left alone, to raise our children in freedom, to find our own place among the stars." She paused, her eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "But we will not be prey. We will not follow rules designed to ensure our defeat. We will not accept a system that treats young species as resources to be exploited. If that makes us barbarians in your eyes, so be it." The Vethkai delegate tried to interrupt, but Jang continued. "You ask what we want. We want a seat at the table. We want a voice in the rules that govern this galaxy. We want what every species deserves: the right to exist on our own terms." She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something almost gentle. "We are not your enemies. We are simply not your victims. There's a difference." The vote to grant humanity full Concord membership passed 3 days later. It was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. Too many species had watched the battle recordings and understood the message. Humanity was not a problem to be crushed. Humanity was a reality to be acknowledged. In the years that followed, the 47 laws of war were quietly retired. No one formally repealed them, but everyone understood that they no longer applied. A species existed now that would not follow them, and once one species defied the rules, others began to question them as well. The Concord established something new. Not rules of war, but rules of peace. Treaties built not on assumptions of shared values, but on clear-eyed recognition that different species had different definitions of survival. Humanity remained an unsettling presence in galactic politics. They never apologized for Saronis, never expressed shame for the lives they had taken. When other species asked how they could have done such things, humans simply looked at them with those strange, hungry eyes and asked a question in return: what would you do to protect your children? No one had a good answer on Earth. Admiral Jiang retired from active service and spent her remaining years writing her memoirs. The book became required reading in military academies across the galaxy. Not because anyone wanted to imitate human tactics, but because everyone wanted to understand them in the final chapter. She wrote something that historians would quote for centuries. The galaxy believed that war was a game with rules, a contest between civilized beings who shared fundamental values. They were wrong. War is survival, and survival has no rules. We did not teach them this. We simply reminded them of something they had forgotten. The book ended with a passage that became famous across known space. They called us barbarians. Perhaps we are. But our children grow up free, and that is worth any price. The stars belong to those who refuse to surrender. We will never surrender on the treaty moon of Valdris. The crystal surface that once bore the 47 laws now displayed something different. A simple message carved in every known language. Peace through understanding. War through necessity. Freedom through defiance. Below it,